School Committee. Hello to everyone in the school committee chamber. Hello. And to everyone joining us from home. This is our final school committee meeting of the 2023 or 2022-2023 school year. It comes on the heels of the Juneteenth federal holiday. I hope everyone had a lovely extended weekend. It's also the day before the last day of school for our students. So I know everyone's going to enjoy that joyous occasion, all of our students. So tonight we will begin with a period for public comment, which is an opportunity for members of the public to address the school committee and for committee members to directly hear your concerns and your perspective. We do not respond in this context, but we will listen and seriously consider all feedback we receive. Each of us is also available by email or phone should you wish to schedule a conversation. We have a couple of people signed up to speak. When called, you'll be able to unmute, state your name and address, and take up to 3 minutes to share your concerns with the committee. Vice Chair Kathy Shields will give you a 30-second verbal warning before your time expires. And our first public commenter is Jo Louise Allen, followed by Nathan Persempieri.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me? I was having trouble unmuting. So,
Yeah.
yes,
No.
unmuting. Now you can hear me?
Yes,
right?
we can hear you.
Okay, and I think I'd like you to see me too. So let me try this. Yeah, there we go. You can see me now. Oh, you can see me now and hear me, right? Are you seeing me in double? Because on my computer, I'm showing up twice. No? Okay, thanks. I just wanted to start by thanking the school committee and the mayor and the interim superintendent for having given me this opportunity to speak tonight. And it's not just a coincidence that Nathan Persempieri is going to be the next speaker. We actually have tried to ask for, like, we can combine our time into 6 minutes. And I have only about 4 minutes to say, and I'll introduce Nathan at the end. I believe he might have 1.5 to 2 minutes to speak. So I wanted to tell you where I'm coming from, and for the new, not that you're brand new, but the Ward 8 and maybe the Ward 2. I think everybody on school committee has known me, and that I've been very involved for the last 30 years, and with my children began kindergarten in 1995. And the last one graduated in 2019. Okay, so I said that my topic was understanding our differences, and it's really much more about the short-sightedness and the elimination of the line item and the cutting of the whole program that's been here for 45 years. And, again, I've been here, and changing start times for the high school took 3 years until they kept going back and forth and back and forth. And most every policy change, like bullying and everything in AP classes, was not just decided in like 3 months or 6 months. And yet this elimination of understanding our differences was not even explained or presented to the membership of the Special Education Parents Advisory Council, which the membership has over 300 members. And part of the uproar that you heard is that suddenly we got some notification, and then people just really pretty much went ballistic. So, and I also wanted to include, and Rebecca Lubens from UOD can show you this, that currently there's 2,231 people who are in the community and are parents of the Newton Public School System who signed a petition, asking please restore UOD.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, of what? Is that of the 4 minutes or the 3 minutes?
Jo Louise, you have 3 minutes total.
I have, yeah, well, okay. Well, I thought, sorry, I thought Nathan and I were splitting it. Okay, so suddenly it was just gone, and the membership never got a word in. So why don't I just turn it over to Nathan, and I'll put the rest in your mailboxes. I have a lot more comments than will fit in 3 minutes. And Nathan is on the board of Understanding Our Differences. He has been,
Advisory board.
what? Sorry, Nathan?
Advisory board.
Oh, sorry, the advisory board. And is this correct? You've been a guest speaker for?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you, Joe
Thank you very much.
Louise.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Joe
Thank
Louise.
you. You're welcome. I'm
Our
done.
next public speaker will be Nathan Persampieri. Nathan, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Joe Louise. Good evening. I'm Nathan Persampieri from 19 Fairmont Avenue. I also want to express my profound disappointment that Understanding Our Differences is not included in the budget next year. It is an invaluable program that teaches children the lifelong skill of how to be inclusive. I have been a speaker for the Physical Disabilities Unit, and it's so wonderful to know I have such an impact. UOD is a program that has been going on for 45 years. Why get rid of a program that has been going on that long? Instead, NPS is proposing a curriculum that aligns with the social justice learning standards, and it's an anti-bias curriculum. While it has lessons of why elections matter, which I appreciate, it doesn't really teach about disability. What's more is that NPS decided to cut this program without any evidence. They were given a chance to, but they haven't even seen a presentation or a program. And if they have, it's been very few and not with not many people. This feels very bureaucratic, and NPS is not listening to the needs of people with disabilities, UOD staff, or community members. I implore you to reevaluate this program and all its materials and ensure that people with disabilities and everybody is included in the decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Up next, we have Karen Manning, followed by Josh Goldstein.
Hi.
Hello. You've 3 minutes.
Sorry, my phone is ringing just as I sign on. My name is Karen Manning. I'm on Kirkstall Road in Newton, and I was an MPS parent for 15 years and a parent and community leader, or had parent and community leadership roles almost as long. I think we can all appreciate that things are off the rails in the world today and that nothing is business as usual. And like others, I have observed that the impact of the pandemic and other unique modern challenges facing students, teachers, and the teaching profession cannot be overstated. And with this in mind, my question for you is, where is your collective passion for properly funding the operation of Newton schools, even if it's hard to do? While campaigning for your roles, many of you asserted that the schools are your highest priority. And shouldn't that be the case, even and especially when it's inconvenient, daunting, and or costly? Because that is what I expected. For instance, the question one of the overrides sadly did not pass earlier this year. But is it fair or reasonable to leave a multi-million-dollar operating budget gap for the upcoming school year without a creative solution? And now a proposed teacher contract offering MPS employees a 2% or lower annual cost of living adjustment for the next 3 years. We all know that's inadequate and not competitive. So MPS school-based professionals, I view as the gold standard, and I wholly trust their judgment. And when they outline and what they outline and assert, for what they need and what students require for success. Please take them seriously. Striving for excellence and equity within NPS cannot be superficial. The schools cannot withstand all of these endless cuts and shortcuts. Please don't delay in agreeing to an outstanding contract. And then please don't second guess that contract is too expensive or feel nervous about falling off a financial cliff. If systemic overspending exists or something egregious is happening within NPS, then the proper stakeholders can uncover that and problem solve over time. And if it's just very costly to do this right, which seems likely, then make the investment proudly and bring along the community for their support and their buy-in. Please keep your campaign word that the schools are your biggest and highest priority. You can overplay your hand. Without proper investment in our schools, we'll have a bigger price to pay both sooner and later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Josh Goldstein, followed by Jane Franz.
Hi, thank you. I'm Josh Goldstein on Swallow Drive, and I'm, as you know, I'm the outgoing CPAC co-chair, but I'm speaking tonight just as an individual parent. I wanted to first say how much I appreciate seeing in the presentation that Casey Noel Miller is going to present tonight, the commitment to becoming an anti-ableist school district and the work that's being done in that regard. But by the same token, I wanted to take some time to highlight some areas in which I think we have a long way to go, and which Newton, unfortunately, is not an outlier. Newton is very much like, I'm sure, almost every other school in the country in these ways, that we need to take a hard, critical look at our practices that are widespread and that have been created by and for those in the majority, and look very critically at the ways in which they might not be working well for, might even be causing harm for those in the minority. So a few specific areas I wanted to discuss. The first is accessibility. When we think about accessibility, we should be thinking about the ADA, about ADA compliance as setting the floor, as establishing the bare minimum. We should also be thinking about when it comes to access, that access basic human right. I think we should, and that should couch all discussions of accessibility. So for instance, we know that we have a huge problem with playgrounds being inaccessible, and while that will take a steps to ensure that recess is recess is accessible, and that may mean think creatively what recess looks like, something is inaccessible, a student, an activity that is on its face inaccessible, then we shouldn't be surprised when the students' peers also think it's okay to not be inclusive themselves and to not make their own activities accessible. Another practice I want to draw attention to is very much our social norms based around what constitutes a good listener, what constitutes someone with good social skills. There's a whole growing body of research that says neurodivergent teaching kids that there's no right or wrong way to communicate, and they need to learn how to bridge communication differences.
We've had a little bit of trouble with your audio, your connectivity feed. So if you'd like, please send us your remarks by email. That way we can understand fully. Thank you very much. Up next, we have Jane Franz, followed by Chris Esmond. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, sorry. I lost.
Okay.
Mute my audio
gonna start the video. There we go. Okay. My name is Jane Franz and I live at 12 Glastonbury Oval. I'm speaking tonight about the cut in the kindergarten aides. I taught kindergarten for 12 years in several situations, in a full day model without an aide, and left to teach another grade level after 3 years. As the only adult in a class in a 3/4 day schedule and the same schedule with an aide. Without question, the addition of an aide to the classroom was a game changer in terms of my ability to provide for the academic, social, and emotional needs of 5-year-old children. Entering a complex public school system from a daycare situation with a legally mandated 1-to-10 adult-student ratio is a major adjustment that should not be underestimated. In addition, when full-day kindergarten was implemented, the superintendent stated, "These assistants will allow us to provide small group learning opportunities for students throughout the day." With this new model, the time spent in small group instruction will be significantly reduced. The system needs to be explicit in its communication to parents and to teachers about the outcome of this decision, that students will not receive small group instruction when the aide is not in the classroom. Teachers should not be in a position of explaining why they cannot safely supervise 16 5-year-old children while she or he is focused on small group instruction with 4 or 5 children. My greatest fear about this cut is that iPads will be misused or overused. I'm also concerned that parents with incoming kindergartners are largely unaware of this cut, a cut that will make it all the harder for teachers to provide for the academic, social, and emotional needs of their very young children as they adjust to public school. For these reasons, I urge you to restore the funding for the kindergarten aides to the budget. Thank you very much for your time and attention tonight.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Chris Esmond.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Esmond. I live on Linwood Avenue, and I'd just like to make a brief comment. The Horace Mann Community Action Committee would like to make a public thank you to the school committee for supporting the design and funding of the Horace Mann addition and renovation project. For the Horace Mann community, it has been a long 4 years of advocacy work with many ups and downs, a huge cost and time, effort, frustration, and resources. And at this point, I think we can all agree that it's not an experience that we nor any other Newton neighborhood should have to undergo. Nonetheless, we at Horace Mann are very grateful, very relieved, and delighted to have a school building at 225 Nevada Street that is finally on a secure path to becoming a 21st century school facility. So we'd like to give a hearty thank you to everyone on the school committee, with shout outs to the chair, Tamika Olszewski, and to Chris Bresky for their strong support. And also a special thank you to Mayor Fuller for working hard to design and implement a creative plan that made its way through the pension board and the city council to finally win secure funding for Horace Mann. That said, we ask you to please remember that Horace Mann is not yet out of the woods. The project will not be easy, as it will be an occupied renovation with students on site for the construction work. Horace Mann will need your continued support as the design phase continues and the addition renovation work commences in years to come. Also, in closing, a thank you to Kathy Smith from the Horace Mann community for doing a fabulous job as interim superintendent during a challenging year for the Newton Public Schools. In closing, we'd like to, from the Horace Mann community, just to say that we are grateful for your support and wish you all a relaxing summer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone who spoke. We very much appreciate hearing your perspective. Our period for public comment is now closed. And at this time, we would like to turn to a bit of an unusual pause in our, our normal course of our school committee meeting, with apologies to our audience and viewers from home. We are going to pause here and recognize and bid farewell to our interim superintendent, Kathy Smith. We have a little cake. We have a little, sorry, Casey, I know. Cake and cookie cake. And we'll have some lovely parting gifts for you as well. So let's take a pause, and it's a bit of a party time right now.
Wow.
So let's kick things off by just sharing thoughts and impressions. And everyone is welcome if you would like to, just, you know, where the hot seats are. Chris, would you like to say a thought or a couple of words for Kathy?
Sure. So I want to thank you so much, Kathy. I mean, this was a tough spot to come into for a year, and you were handed the toughest assignment in the city. And you know, the work you put in, not just in, at the end of the day, really kind of holding the line, but you still made advances. And we still, you know, we just got that annual report last week, and that's, you know, something that would have never happened without you. We were, you know, we're starting to work on some of these other initiatives that it wasn't just you know, making sure the trains ran on time. You really did bring the district forward. So I honestly can't thank you enough, and all the great personal conversations we've had one-on-one. Just learn to forecast the weather a little better.
Thanks, Chris. Anping?
Thank you. Very happy to make some comments. And I was sitting on the you know, selection committee with Cove and Tamika, and we interviewed a bunch of folks. And Kathy, you really impressed me with your old energy. And I was a little bit suspicious. I said, wow, are you sure you can handle, you know, after you retired and already did some interim? So, because compared with other candidates, your passionate, you know, energy way above other people. So, but I was deeply impressed. And when you're talking about the school, you know, report, I believe you mentioned that. But anyway, very happy. So, you know, that was an easy decision for us. By the way, we don't need to rack our mind to compare with any candidates because you stood out. And well, as Chris said, you already did something amazing with the school report and other issues. Of course, 2 budgets. I don't know if Chris mentioned that, but that was amazing. When you proposed we are going to have 2 budgets, I said, wow, even 1 budget could be very, very challenging. But and plus the override, and of course I will add school calendar work. That's something more a little bit personal to me, as people know. So overall, it's wonderful. It's challenging, and very happy to follow you and to throughout your term. So when we met in the summer, and now it's coming to summer again. So thank you so much. This is a tremendous transition time, and I know you work very, very hard, and to stay late and with additional meetings, and probably Tamika will count it how many additional meetings compared with past years, or probably Emily could count it. Okay, this year we had 10, 20, 30, I don't know. But certainly, thank you very much. It's great pleasure, and I miss you, and hope you all the best after the final retirement.
That's right.
Probably we should have never said never, but I hope this is the final.
Thanks, Anping.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the number is in the high 20s of extra school committee meetings.
So before we cut the cake, we just wanted you to see it. It just says thank you. We
Thank
also
you
have
so
a
much.
chocolate chip cookie.
Oh, my goodness.
So would you prefer chocolate cake or cookie? And I'll start cutting up.
I'll have chocolate cake.
Wise choice.
Chocolate cake?
All right, while Kathy is brandishing a very large knife. While Kathy is still slicing the cake, we'll pass it out. We'll keep going around and saying, just a final, something that you'd like to say publicly for Kathy. And we only have 10 minutes for our bon fete. And we'll keep going. So Emily?
In other words, keep it short.
Yes.
Okay. I just quickly want to say a huge thank you. I mean, significant thank you. I too, when we knew we were going to have an interim superintendent over this last summer, and I thought, oh my goodness, who were we going to find? And you talked about those big rocks. I thought, we got a lot of big rocks right now. And how on earth is she going to rise to that occasion? And rise to the occasion you did. So a huge thank you. And I also want to especially thank you because I had a wonderful time working on the override with you, and which was very special. Didn't always go the way we were hoping it would go, but it was a joy and a pleasure to work with you all year, and please keep in touch.
Thank you, Emily. Go ahead, Cole.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you as well. And, agree with what everyone else said. I knew when I talked to you, I didn't know what to expect in an interim, but when I talked to you and I heard your experience and your professionalism, and I think the other thing I really appreciate is that you're really an educator's educator. So you've seen a lot of things and you understand what goes on in classrooms and everywhere else. So I've learned a lot from working with you, and I appreciate everything you've done for Newton.
Thank you. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Tamika. Kathy, I was so excited when you accepted our appointment a year ago. I had heard wonderful things about you from people all over the state. We had high expectations and you've exceeded them. And I just want to say, you're the teacher that all of us would have wanted to have at some point in our lives. And in fact, we have had you as our teacher, and I'm very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'll go because Kathy's escorting our cake towards our staff. Kathy, I think my thoughts mirror what everyone else has shared. I think you have been a real treasure and a gift this year when we needed stability and that sure leadership as we transition from a superintendent who's been here for many, many years to the newness and excitement of our next superintendent. And not only were you transitioning us through that time, you were leading us through a barrage of challenges that I think none of us would ever imagine that we would be doing simultaneously in a year. We were supporting an override. We were negotiating 3 bargainings, or 3 union contracts. We were doing student reassignment or student assignment of one of our middle school and figuring that out. We were doing so much. I know I'm leaving things off, but that's because there were so many things under the big rocks that you had to shoulder, and you did so beautifully, and we very much appreciate it. Kathy?
I don't have much to add to what my colleagues have said. It's been truly a joy to work with you this year. Thank you for everything that you've done. You were amazing in leading us through the override campaign. With respect to all of the big rocks you have helped us tackle this year. It's just been wonderful to work with you, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I just
Pam?
have a quick one, if I may.
Yes, of
So
course.
Kathy is a great storyteller. And one of the stories that I think is one that I think back and cherish is I was on the call for the December Great Wind Event with Kathy and the City Hall and about 25 other people, DPW, we had weather, we had forecasts, and they were saying it was going to be mid-50s, but very, very windy. And they were, we had discussions about possibly closing. I said, Kathy, we've never closed for school, for wind. And what I learned from Kathy is that what guided Kathy in that decision and all her decisions was about students. She said, I cannot put the jeopardy and safety of the students at risk, not on my watch.
And she took that approach on everything that she did, from the budget to the override. Everything was guided by the students. And in some ways, that, you know, after all these years doing this, that was still her piece. And I learned a lot from her with that lens, and that's something that I really aspire to do myself. But the Great Wind event was something that Kathy felt we needed, and was gladly there. So that's my story.
Thank you, Liam. Appreciate it. All right. I think we could do this for hours and hours and hours. There's a lot of appreciation to go around, but we will turn to the rest of our agenda item while everyone is munching away at cake.
Are we on camera?
We are. on
Can I just make
camera.
one
Yes.
comment? And the reason I do have a farewell at the end, and thank you, Lisa, we were developing the agenda. A couple of reasons. I know there are people that probably won't stay for the whole meeting. So at least just give me 2 minutes quickly.
Yep.
I first of all want to thank my husband, Jerry Smith, who is in the audience this evening. He's actually here moving out some of my boxes. And I said, you know what? I said, why don't you come? There's going to be cake. And really that was all he needed to hear. But it has certainly been quite a year. He's been a great partner, loves the stories about Newton, has heard what a wonderful district, has heard about each and every one of you. I'm sure as he sat here and listened to all of you tonight, he could put those names to faces right away. So I just have one thing to do while you're here, and I will finish. So school committee, you've had a few words, and my favorite now, I'm going to say the last one. A year ago tonight, you were actually interviewing me on Zoom, a year ago tonight. And I call this the last one in honor of Matt LeBlanc, who I believe is a graduate of Newton North High School. And if you've watched Friends, and that's gotten me through the past year, actually, when I try to get to sleep at night. So this is the last one. So all of you, I have written you notes. I loved writing them. It was amazing to me after being in a lot of districts that I felt because of this challenging year, I knew each of you in such a different way than I've ever really had the opportunity to know a school committee. So I hope you see yourself. There are so many things that are similar for all of you. So again, just a quick thank you for selecting me to serve as your interim superintendent for this past year. And on PIG, I love when you take credit for that. Welcoming me to the Newton Public School community, collaboration and partnership during a challenging time. Appreciated the hard work and tremendous efforts in advocating for additional funding for our schools. Enjoyed laughing with you during times of stress to ease the tension. Enjoyed hearing you educate the PTO on Chapter 70 funding and state funding mechanisms. Sharing articles, podcasts, links, information on education in 2023. Paul, I know you're hearing yourself in that. Mediating and finding common ground on differences of opinion. Knowledge in all your efforts, representing the MPS on budget projects, renovations, facility upgrades, MSBA projects. Unwavering support in making sure students experience a sense of belonging and the opportunities to reach their full potential. Knowledge of NPS policies, protocols, culture in general, negotiating skills, always prepared. Represented at many events related to our students and families, and thoughtful, deliberate, kind, prepared for agenda items and important votes. So, you know, I have, like I said, worked with a lot of people, and I talk about the premier district. This is by far the premier school committee. So I know the public knows the work that you do, or if they don't, I hope that they understand the efforts from the heart and the efforts you put into allowing our team, you know, our leadership team, you know, many of the members here this evening, to do the work we do and to be there for us all times. So I want to thank you. I've given you a little gift of Cape Cod and a little note to thank you for all of this. And one more thing, because I'm telling my husband he has to leave to go back to the Cape. He's probably not listening to me, but I also have my 2 executive assistants here tonight. And Lisa, I know you have to stay the whole time because you are always here, but Carolyn might get a chance to go home. So can you get me what I need, Jerry? Aisha? Oh, I see them there. I want to thank you for your loyalty, your dedication, your working long hours, you're supporting a new superintendent. I know you're going to support another new superintendent. You're approachable, knowledge, you're kind, you take many calls, you're wonderful to the community, and I never, ever would have made it through this year without you. So let me just come around. That's it.
That was incredibly thoughtful. I love that you did that, and I see Carolyn's having a moment. You're due a moment. And it's a great segue. The committee also has a good gift, a parting gift for you. We took a pool together and we wanted to treat you and Jerry, if you're so inclined to invite him, to a lovely dinner to your favorite restaurant, La Cucina, whenever you get the mood for some Italian after your long stint here in Newton for this year, doing all of the jobs.
Thank you
Anyway,
very much.
and there are some silly, sentimental, and Newton specific presents also in there for you, in addition to your gift card.
Do you want me to open them?
No.
Oh,
We
okay.
or no.
Oh, we're supposed to take a picture at the end of the night?
Yeah, we can do it.
Okay, because I want to show everybody what the mayor gave me.
That's
So
very
I
good
had
of
a
you.
meeting with the mayor, and on her mantle, I've seen it before. I did not realize you renamed a part of, is it Brandeis Road? Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Brandeis Road. And she gave me this, told me it's been a lion of a year, and I love it. It really is a street sign.
Cool.
So I do have an office at home. It has some memorabilia of different districts, so this will be the biggest by far, and I will forever remember my time here. So I'll have to, when we take the picture, I'd love to take the picture.
Yes, absolutely. And Anping also has a gift.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure where it went. Oh, here.
I probably have a few words.
It couldn't-
Should I wait until end of?
Oh, no. I think you can share those privately. How about that?
Okay.
Let's turn to our back to business. And we have one item on our consent agenda. It's the approval of the Franklin School Educational Design and Enrollment Plan. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Yes. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Cove. We have a motion and a second. We'll now do a roll call vote by ward. My mouth is all cakey. Ward 1 is not present. Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4, yes. Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 8,
Yes.
and Mayor Fuller is not present. Thank you, everyone. All right, continuing on to our first item for discussion. It is an update on student services by Casey No Miller, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. Welcome, Casey.
Good evening, everyone. Let's see, Tamika, I won't be able to see anybody, but can you tell me if you can see my screen?
We see you presently. We're not seeing your screen.
Okay, hang on, Stephen, I might need your help here.
Screen share button at the bottom.
Can you see my screen now?
Screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody. So good evening, everyone. I'm very much looking forward to sharing updates with you from my first year in Newton. Just quickly, here's a roadmap for what I will be covering tonight. It's essentially a two-part presentation, the first of which will be a presentation on my own entry plan process that I engaged in as I began to build my knowledge of the district and meet some of my colleagues. After presenting on the entry plan, I will be sharing with the committee the work that the administrators within the Office of Student Services have been engaged in this year, and end with what to look forward to for next year from the Office of Leagues as I could, starting with the leaders in the district. I wanted to hear from folks, their experiences in the district, what their roles entailed, the responsibilities that they had, and to also build my understanding of the organization and how the pieces interacted with each other. Through listening and learning from folks, I also expected to surface any themes, which I am happy to share with folks tonight. So I really tried to hit the ground running and began setting up interviews with folks for the first month that I was in the district. In total, I conducted 72 interviews within the timeline listed here. Positions of folks should all be listed here, just to give you an idea of the breadth of folks that I tried to cover. So to maintain, excuse me, sorry about that. To maintain consistency and fidelity with the process, I also asked everyone the same 6 questions. What's your role? How long have you been an MPS? What are your primary responsibilities? In your opinion, what are the district's strengths? Where are the district's growth areas? What's the work and the role of the Office of Student Services? And what's the work and what is the work of your office or role and the Office of Student Services? The themes that I collected are listed here on this slide. After a few interviews, I really began to notice that folks were sharing the same, if not very similar answers. It made pulling themes actually pretty easy. Listed here are the 4 major themes coming out of my interviews. And in the following slides, I'll go into each of these themes more deeply. So the first thing that came up was literally what every single person I interviewed reported, that the staff here are the strength of the district. I'd have to strongly agree here. One of the first impressions that I had when I started working here is the positive adult culture all around. I've witnessed and experienced genuine respect for each other. Folks truly seemed to appreciate the years of service and the skills of their colleagues. I've also experienced a number of adult cultures in workplaces, and this truly has been the most welcoming and positive, where folks are truly focused on the work. The second theme that emerged is this assertion that general education and special education operate in silos. Folks reported that they don't have much insight into what their counterparts are engaged in. Folks did take it upon themselves to share with me that when there has been cross-departmental work, that they very much enjoyed those experiences and opportunities to learn from each other. The next theme to share is that when I asked what they thought the work of the Office of Student Services is, most folks answered with special education and not even repeating student services. With some folks, I asked if they realized that they had replaced the words, and they said that they hadn't. It's telling to me, as I presented before, the number of other areas student service covers, owns, and co-owns, but the general sentiment, at least among the folks that I met with, is that the terms were interchangeable. The last theme is an interesting one to me. Despite that it was not an explicit question, many folks talked with me about the need to build relationships within the Office of Student Services and how important it is to rebuild trust among the leaders in particular within the Office of Student Services. In a moment, when I transition to sharing about updates on what the team and I have done this year, I'll share more about how this was addressed through some of the work that we've been doing that Josh Goldstein actually during his public comment referenced. So in terms of what's next, there's still learning that I want to do, more information to gather, and in particular to address a few data points. One is the perception of siloed work. And I'm making an assumption here that there's a connection between the siloed work and the data points showing different areas of disparity between students with disability and those without. This was also reported in the CPAC co-chair's presentation at the last school committee meeting. I think a lot about how a school system is set up to ensure access for everyone to general education, the environment, the classrooms, the life of the school, and of course the curriculum. What's the infrastructure? What are the systems and processes to ensure that all students know what the pathways are to access general education? I want to learn from special educators what their current practices are related to this, and from where can we learn? I also will be leading our group of OSS administrators in a systematic review of data involving students with disabilities, catch where all the disparities are, and begin to formulate a cohesive narrative. I think once we know where we are, we can better go where we need to go. So that's the first part of my presentation. I'll turn next to the part of the presentation on what Office of Student Services administrators have been engaged in throughout the year during our bi-monthly meetings. Before I do that though, I'd like to ask the committee to just take 10 seconds and to think to yourself about the term ableism. Have you heard this term before? What do you know about it? When was the first time you've heard this term? And maybe throughout the next few slides as I'm presenting, think about how, if at all, ableism shows up in your daily life. And if I may, just one more piece before I jump in. I recognize that not many of you know about my personal story and my own journey. I would have liked to have shared this in person, but personal conflicts prevented me from doing so tonight. Nevertheless, I hope this message comes across. I am an immigrant. My parents and I immigrated here from China. While you can look at my resume and whatever write-ups there are, what may not show is that I've had many moments where I've been othered, felt like I didn't belong, and most of these moments happened in school settings. In fact, it wasn't until graduate school, when I was 23 years old, when I felt like I actually had an adult who truly believed in me and my abilities and encouraged me to lean into my authentic self and trust in my abilities. This adult was one of my professors at Tufts University, where I was studying to be a school psychologist. And he worked to remove barriers for me that were unnecessarily in the way. And for the barriers that I did have to face, he encouraged me to dig deep and use what I know I had. I tell this story for two reasons. One is in order for me to do meaningful work, I need to find a personal connection. The other reason to share with this committee that as educators and one of the leaders to these educators is that mindset really, really matters here. So there's a longstanding tradition of small groups of Office of Student Services staff called collaborators that meet on Mondays regularly. Every 2 weeks, I have the privilege of meeting with all of the administrators from the Office of Student Services. There are other collaborative groups made up of different groups, different folks within OSS, and are led by the directors of special education. The group that I led is listed here, and again, they're all the administrators in student services. In total, there are about 30 of us. I just wanted to take a moment here and share with the committee the titles of all of the folks with whom I've worked and learned alongside this year. They truly are an incredible team of experts, all caring folks and very much wanting to dig into the work. I went into this year with 3 goals with this group of collaborators. I wanted to build community, trust, and psychological safety. Without these, I believe that we wouldn't get to the actual work. I led the group to assess or reassess their individual reasons for being in this work and what we called our whys. I also sought to align where we could with so many administrators in a district this size. It's important to continue to align on practice and beliefs where we can, so that the student experience is consistent, level to level and school to school. So we read 2 books as a group. The first one is Leadership on the Line, which is more of a level setting aim that I had. It gave us common language to talk about our work, categorizing it in 2 different ways: adaptive work that requires culture setting and people development, that kind of work, versus technical work, which has a clear question and answer. In education, we often tackle both kinds of work, but it requires different skill sets to do each of these well, and breaking that down as a group was really helpful. We then read Neurotribes as a group. The book covers the author's interpretation of the history of autism and also talks about the concept of neurodiversity. Neurodiversity, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is the idea that people experience and interact with the world around them in different ways. There's no one way or right way of thinking, learning, and that all human differences are viewed as, are not viewed as deficits, excuse me. In wrestling with this idea of neurodiversity, that we all experience the world differently, that we operate differently, we as a group began thinking about how, if we believe that neurodiversity exists, does our school system effectively support the people within the system to learn the way that suits their style or their styles? It inevitably led us to consider whether ableism exists in our system, and if so, to what extent. So as a recap, ableism is the discrimination of and social prejudice against people with disabilities. It's the discrimination of people with disabilities in favor of those without disabilities. Some macro examples include the eugenics movement in this country during the late 19th century, and actually, I learned recently, continued on into the 1940s. As Josh Goldstein mentioned earlier, lack of compliance with disability laws. Some micro versions of ableism can show up in field trips that are planned for able-bodied students and planned with certain assumptions about students. Again, I want to stress here that mindset does matter and can have a deep impact on student learning. As a group, we also invited central office staff to join us in this work, which they did. And as a whole group, we began examining existing systems, structures, and processes for where ableism shows up. This is where we left the work this year, and I want to share with the committee where we hope to take this work next year. Using the district's work on anti-racism and equity as a guide, we're looking to further the work of being an anti-ableist school community. It's the tip of the iceberg, I recognize, but while not many districts are doing this kind of work across the Commonwealth, I know we can do it here. And in order to do this work well, we have to be intentional about integrating the work where it fits. In other words, we have to be explicit about embedding this work as part of our larger district work. Some of it we do have to wait until Dr. Nolan is officially on board, but I imagine this work fitting neatly with other work that will continue and some that will start new this year. One being the continued work on building our culturally responsive muscles. How do we continue to be identity affirming? While we work on our disability inclusive curriculum, how can we ensure that it's done with an anti-ableist lens or through an anti-ableist lens? As we look to the type of graduate that we hope to produce, how are we defining and shaping the student experience regardless of label, school, or grouping? And lastly, knowing what an advocate Dr. Nolan is for using data to make decisions, we want to ensure that data is collected and analyzed through an anti-ableist lens. We want to be able to remove the mindset barriers that are inadvertently limiting our students. I will stop sharing and will happily take any questions.
Thank you, Casey. Appreciate the presentation. So questions from the members, we'll just go along and give a question, just indicate so. Oh, go ahead, Emily.
I don't really have a question. You did a very thorough job, Casey, and I really appreciate all the information that you gave. I'm very interested and excited to see what next year brings in terms of integrating the concept of anti-ableism in a similar way that we're dealing with anti-racism and our equity work. I think that's very exciting. And personally, as a parent who had kids who went through NPS, both of whom on IEPs, I'm actually very excited and interested in to see kind of what the next presentation is going to be to see how this is actually implemented. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Emily. Others, thoughts, comments, questions? Go ahead, Anping.
Casey, thanks very much for presentation. I had a pleasure meeting you at the beginning of the year and, had some conversation regarding your background and my concern about community. And, I appreciate that you have done a lot of work, and the Newton community is well known for its special education, and but also challenges there, as we have all witnessed during the past year. I think the last part, as Emily mentioned, that I heard this word ableism quite often now, and the other word is neurodiversities. And to me, these are kind of relative new terms. And I think probably that's just my personal thoughts. We will need to do some more work with the community and to learn from community, but also kind of educating the community. So it's a kind of two-way work. And nowadays, as we all learn that special education, regular education are very integrated. And again, my son was example. He had ADHD, but I was not quite sure. So he never benefit from the special education because I was very hesitant. We were not well educated. But now I think that, some parents, particularly as I mentioned before, immigrant parents, minority parents, sometimes they still have a little bit reservation or concern. And I hate to think that those kids will, like my son, miss that excellent education in community. And I think we can work together how to, engage community and have more dialogues, forums, presentations. I know it takes energy and time, resource to do that, but it's critical. If we miss those parents, families, and those kids, that could impact their lives. So thank you again for your great work. And I think we will still fully support you in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanping. Others from the committee? Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
Casey, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you've done this year, and thanks for sharing your personal challenges and story with us. I know it's hard to do over Zoom, but it's meaningful. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. So, oh, of course, Kathy.
Yeah, I want to echo the same thing. I had the privilege, obviously, of working with Casey this year. I was amazed in the beginning, the efforts that she was putting in to do an entry plan, meet with everybody, and very quickly she was relied upon, certainly trusted as an advisor and in many other roles. So I want to thank her for all those efforts. And again, for sharing some of her own challenges. She's always very brave, and we're always very proud of the work that she's doing on behalf of all our kids and families in the district.
Thanks, Kathy. So my thoughts are, I commend you, Casey, for coming and giving us this snapshot of what's been going on with your department over the year. And in case anyone missed it, it's only been a year. I think you are in the midst of building and laying the foundation that will mean that this district is actually able to deliver on its promise of excellence and equity for all students with regard to student services. And I think it's important work. It's work that's going to take time. It's not kind of reframing and readjusting our thoughts and deconstructing this concept of ableism and rooting it out where it manifests itself. That's going to take time. And I think too often we're always eager to get things done and just change, but change is an incremental process. And what you've started this year is a huge step on that journey. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming here tonight, and thank you very much. Okay, we are going to continue on to a fiscal and operational and facilities update. Here we have Liam Hurley, Assistant Superintendent, Chief Financial and Administrative Officer. Sean joining you?
I don't think he's joining right now. No.
Okay, it is Liam and Liam alone. Hi, Liam.
Thank you. Again, Sean, Alyssa, team. The fiscal and ops is actually a full HR department, facilities department, Student Services Department, everyone actually has a piece of this large puzzle that we have here. So this is the sixth FY23 report. We actually do, if you recall, we'll actually give you a final report in September, just to tell you where we land on everything. There's a closing process that we do kind of through the months of July and even into August. In September, we then start up again with that end of year report. So we'll be reporting to the state on FY23. Use that end of year report on all sorts of information. So the good news is we are on track to basically just surpass kind of where we needed. As you know, as part of the FY24 budget, we needed to have just under $2.3 million for carry forward. So again, we have our budget and we have that carry forward money, still that reliance. That reliance is down significantly from the year before, where we were relying on $4.6 million. So, a big reduction from that. But again, in my mind and over time, ideally, we would not actually have any reliance on any carry forward money. We would basically have our budget meet the needs that we have for that. So interestingly, we're at 83% of the annual budget as compared this year. Last year at this time was 82%. So again, that 1% approximately correct in terms of thinking about what we ended with that reserve. We had been carrying $1 million budget reserve all along. We had been showing it what we call spent. We're now showing that reserve, we're not needing to have that as spent right now. There's a few variances I do want to talk to you about this fiscal and just open it up to you folks. So really the first one is under health insurance. So with the city's movement to Blue Cross Blue Shield as of July 1, so for our 10-month employees, we had assumed a 5% rate increase, but believe it or not, I think you folks are aware the city is moving from the 0.32 Tufts and Harvard as of July 1, but we actually need to accrue the July and August payments in FY23. So the impact of that 13% rate increase actually hits us in FY23. So to the tune of almost $300,000 negatively impacts us. We're also not getting the for lack of a better word, the effect of the savings that the retiree costs are going to have in FY24. So we had assumed a 5% rate increase, but it's actually closer to about a 13% increase. So for our 10-month employees that get paid in July and August, many of our teachers opt for what's called a lump sum payment. They also can elect to get the typical semi-monthly payments in July and August, but their rate has also gone up. And again, that's a typical thing, but we on our side, our percentage also goes up by that corresponding piece. So I just wanted to explain that and put that out there for people to kind of just to go over that. So that was one of the pieces. I think I also just wanted to mention, we've talked about quite a bit about this in terms of our maintenance. We've kind of call it charter maintenance. And I think it's worth looking at the original budget. We actually report our variances on what's called a revised budget. So as we do budget transfers, we report compared to our revised budget. But if you look on the first column, that's our original budget. So our maintenance budget overall from our original budget as we intended is almost $600,000 over budget. And that's been a trend that we've had for a number of years. And again, that's even with the support of the city doing about $410,000 of charter maintenance summer projects. So again, we're going to get that again this year. But again, it's not a great place to be. Some of that was some of the costs, and we have gotten some reimbursement from the city back. NECP was some expense for us this year. There was a number of things that came in. The project certainly covers a number of items, but we also have a number of FF&E. I'm thinking of Stephen back there as well. There's a number of IT related items as well. They're kind of specific to the school department that they kind of came our way. Tuitions is another important area. Obviously, there's so many important areas to look at, but gross tuitions of about $12.9 million. We had planned about $13.3 million. And this is with total placements of about 127. That's up a couple of students from last year. So pretty close. And again, we've held pretty steady with our total out of district students. That is something really, I think, important to look at. One of the big savings for us this year and the last couple of years actually has been actually in special education transportation. It is really where we've really not had the van drivers, and we've had students instead of kind of that 2-3 range, 2-3-4 range. It's been in the 4-5-6 range. Again, allowable, just some longer rides, longer than we might like. And just having these students on those vans for a little longer than we'd like, but it has resulted in some savings for us. Amy's done a nice job here, kind of recapping some of the grants, some of the effort that we need to do. We have to do something called private share. We actually get the grants. We're awarded grant money that we actually have to reach out and actually try to have some of the private schools in Newton be able to expend some of that money if they're interested in doing that. So we have to kind of do that on their behalf. It's a whole process in doing that. Food services, obviously, I think you folks know, next year will be the last, basically we need to go back out to bid for a food services bid. It's been 5 years already. So Whitson's is our current vendor. And we're still really actually in the waiting point. We certainly want to be very receptive to with the revised fees that we adopted for FY24 into that piece. So I think that's the high level on the fiscal report. I'm sure there's a lot of areas to dig into if you want to, but I just wanted to kind of go through it briefly.
Great. All right, pausing there for questions. Anyone have a question or a comment for Liam?
I'm always waiting for Chris to come up with something that stumps me soon.
He's in a good mood tonight, so I can't bank on that. I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, I was going to just move into facilities. Stephanie Gilman. Sorry, Stephen was just going to do a quick facilities update here too. Is that okay, or do you want to go
Yes,
to
no,
that one?
absolutely.
Okay. I can be as brief as you want on this one. A lot of this, you guys, I think, are up to speed on a lot of it. The city has done what's called its supplemental CIP, the capital improvement plan. Really no significant changes on there. A little bit of funding changes we'll talk about. Newton Northfield Lights, Burfield improvements, and a few projects that we've completed have actually now moved off that list. So that's pretty positive. Lincoln Elliott moving into construction documents, really great news. I've started to see some designs and color palettes, things like that. So that's coming along nicely for 150 Jackson Road. It's going to be, kind of exciting piece there. Arrow Street, our architect, has given Lincoln Elliott a presentation on April 12th. So a lot moving on with 150. They're going to be actually starting demolition the fall of 2023. So the nice part, that's an empty site right now. It's a big site. If you recall, kind of the convent section is going to be coming down. That's going to make way for basically the gymnasium and actually the main entrance, which is going to be, I think, a really kind of a focal point of that building. And then the large parking lot, a lot of that is actually going to be field space, which is nice. And there's going to be a section as well, obviously for parking, but it's really going to get transformed. And we're certainly still shooting for September of 2025 as our next project. Countryside is the MSBA project. They follow this modules. There's some links in here if you want to look at the MSBA modules, and we're moving on right now, hopefully, and there's actually a vote tomorrow, moving kind of from we'll be moving into the schematic design phase or module 4. Hopefully after tomorrow, there's a vote from the MSBA board of directors. So they kind of have to go through all these different steps. Again, this is for a 465 new building. Danisco Design has done a real nice job at that. And as you recall, it's really very likely it's a different site than the current site. The current site really sits in a wet area, kind of the lowest part of the building. So it's a site away from that current spot. Franklin Elementary, you guys voted. Thank you to the school committee voting on that design enrollment right now. I think you're up to speed on that. Horace Mann, thank you to the community member that called in. Thankful to the city and the retirement board adjusting their funding program to allow the Horace Mann project to continue. So we had left that off kind of a pre-feasibility study. So that's going to kick off in July, another project. I think the major concept there is kind of an addition renovation. And right now it is planned that it'd be an occupied kind of renovation project. The concept right now, I don't think it's finalized, is kind of down in kind of the bowl area right now is the potential renovation addition area. So it's going to more work to come, but we've got an architect and an OPM NV5 as our project manager on that. Just shifting to Underwood and Ward, that has been an area of focus, and that's going to be an area I would say pretty intense focus for us for the next number of months. We have gone and had some meetings with the community. Certainly feedback, I think, has been, and there's been a number of questions, there's been a number of comments from community members. Certainly there's a love of their schools. I think that's been loud and clear. Kind of a why now? And then there's also a why didn't you do this 10 years ago type questions, things like that. So we're going to do our best. We wanted to make sure that was going to be on your radar. We'll come forward with the task force is going to be meeting And we need to come up with a revised mission statement that clarifies particularly, I think, some of the shorter term options that was a little unclear. So we'll do that. And we wanted to come back to the school committee. I think we're maybe potentially targeting July 21st. And I think there's another one in July. I think that's on the, I don't think it's on the agenda yet, but that ideally we come back to you folks this summer with that, with an update to that. In the last task force meeting was, I think, really interesting. And if you get a chance, Perkins Eastman, which is the architect kind of designer, I thought did a really excellent job just walking through the buildings, the site. They kind of looked at it from the exterior of the building to the mechanical. They call it MEPFF, Mechanical Engineering Fire Protection Systems. Most of those systems are what's basically called beyond their useful life. At this point, they're basically 100-year-old buildings. Although the facade and structure in some ways is intact, most of the spaces, certainly size-wise, do not meet the educational program needs of what we have. And then from an accessibility perspective, they're very, very poor. Jean Fairley, ADA director, believes Ward is our worst ADA, accessible building in the entire district. So real problematic. I see Stephanie's joined me as well here. Stephanie, in a moment, I want to have you chime in on some of these. Stephanie does a lot of the writing here, so make sure I don't miss anything. So Cabot is just doing an MSBA post-occupancy survey. We've been doing that. A couple of other quick updates. Phase 3 solar, Bill Ferguson, co-director of sustainability. Few projects are continuing. If you recall, we were put on hold on a few projects there. There's a chart there that is still out there. I'd love to see, there's some pieces that we want to continue here at the Ed Center. It'd be great to get out in the parking lot. A large canopy out in that parking lot would produce a lot of kilowatts. There's a number of projects that they don't yet have a completion date, and there are a few here that have a fall 2024 completion date. Some of the roof projects that I'm hopeful that we can get into this. So they're still working. So Select Energy and Ameresco are the two major vendors, and these are complicated. There's something called PPA. I think it's something purchase options, purchase agreements that they've got to navigate through, and then working with the Department of Energy Resources as well in terms of their approval process. So there's a lot of different hoops to really kind of move through on those ones. Help See textile bins. I remember estimating between 20 and 25,000. That's what we've got. We've effectively almost got 220,000 pounds of textiles from the waste system this past year. The goal was to hopefully kind of fund some type of sustainability or green team leader in some of our schools. If we're able to do that, that would be something we'd look to try and do. Some transportation updates over on Albemarle Way, Neighbor Ways. There's been a plan there put in place thinking about biking and some pedestrian plans. They've actually we met with both Principal Jackie Mann and Kathleen Browning from NECP just to make sure they're aware of some of the plans potentially for next year. There's some infrastructure grant we've been talking about for Route 9. And then the city of Newton, there's a new transportation director that took over from Nicole Friedman that actually they worked in Natick, another Natick person, Josh Ostroff, doing a real nice job, has a real comprehensive view, thinking about Natick and thinking about Newton and how it can really become bike friendly, safe friendly, as much as it can basically do, looking for alternative transportation options. And then Park Recreation and Culture, very excited to get this Newton North Stadium lighting going this summer. That's been something we've actually had to have temporary lighting coming in to kind of the late season sports over there. Synthetic turf replacements at Newton South, and then the Cabot Park Pavilion is there. So Stephanie, please, I'm sure I missed a couple of things. Anything quick for the group that you want to add?
I think you covered everything. If there are any specific questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Thank you both. Questions from the members? Go ahead, Chris.
So quick question on Ward Underwood. Exactly what's happening now in terms of the task force, the timing? I mean, is the intent still to come forth with something in December, given that we don't have, we're reworking this mission statement now and
yeah, there's been a request from some members of the team to say, is December even a realistic time, Chris? We're still shooting for that time frame. I think that we acknowledge if the group feels that it's not ready to make a recommendation at that time, we certainly can amend that. I think that we are about to send a communication out. We've got it basically 99% ready to go. it's, you know, with a lot of moving pieces with both of these. So we're trying to make sure we get this language. So communication is going to go out to those. We have an FAQ out and we've gotten a lot of questions in from people that we want to respond to on those people. At this point, I think what I would just say to the school committee and also to the Underwood and Ward communities listening is no decision has been made. I think that there's been some assumptions that we've made decisions already. That's simply not true. We want to be very, very thoughtful and very mindful in terms of timing, thinking about impact on families, thinking about, you know, we do, you know, recognizing they're both 100-year-old buildings. And we've talked about kind of the 3 or 4 components, the educational program not meeting our goals, facility needs not meeting our goals. And another piece that I think we need to talk about is just really the operational and kind of cost effectiveness of running 2 small buildings. That's a piece of it on this piece. So in terms of where we're at, Chris, the task force needs to reconvene, come up with these short and long term. Basically, I think it's really kind of codifying the short term options, making sure people are comfortable with that language, coming back to the school committee. But our work has been progressing. So we had a really thorough analysis from Perkins Eastman's on the facility piece, really showing that I would use the term that the buildings have met their useful life. They're at or beyond their useful life. Can they continue to work and operate as they are? They can, but they're really at the point that you know, they're kind of beyond what you'd recommend for any school that we'd want to see in the future. So then the options, what we're going to be doing after we do this is really coming up and brainstorming options. So internal options, many of which, and I'm just dealing, this is the Josh Morse term, many options are bad options. Some will be good options. So we're going to look at a lot of options, both short and longer term. And, you know, there's very much a likelihood that nothing in the short term is done with these school buildings. There's kind of been a conclusion that we're absolutely doing something. That may not be the case. So the team and task force, I hope we can build some consensus. I do think there'll be kind of a matrix developed, similar we've done before. We'll have to talk a little bit about weighting and how we want to weight certain things. And I think it was a great suggestion that I think that Paul had. I think getting the school committee, I think maybe it's going to be in the fall, to weigh in on what does it envision for its future in neighborhood schools. I think it's really critical. And I think that anybody, you know, everybody and citizens alike can have different perspectives. I think that it'll be important for us to also just take a look at enrollment, future enrollment or projected enrollment. There's been a number of questions kind of calling into, you know, our validity of our enrollment. I think we've done a great job, particularly, you know, looking out on these, but there's questions out there in terms of enrollment from the group. They've challenged us. We've tried to respond as well as we can. The truth from my perspective is that we are going to have a number of open seats or a number of capacity at 15 elementary schools, given where we believe the enrollment is going to be over the next 10 years. So that's something that I think we need to think about. Who knows what the long-term impact is? Again, that's very, very hard. Nobody knows what that future is going to be. So I've said a lot there, Chris. There's a lot to uncover, I think, with this process, but no decisions made. We want to be very thoughtful, and we certainly need the school committee, I think, in terms of you know, helping guide this decision.
Just one logistical follow-up. So the next meeting of that task force is June 27th, and that's virtual. Will that be recorded?
We have not recorded these. Do take minutes. Are we going to record that now, Stephanie?
Yeah. So my apologies for interrupting. We have very, very detailed meeting minutes for the meetings that are in person. And then for the virtual meeting, since we can sort of easily record it, we'll do that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Other questions on Pink? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure if this is a good question, a good time to ask you or Stephanie. I heard some serious concern about the synthetic turf, very bad to the athlete, you know, safety and all that. And I know there's always a little bit controversial with any kind of new product, but I thought we've been using for past how long our Newton school system are using the synthetic turf. Any rough ideas?
You know, I'd have to go back. I mean, I think the Newton North turf field has been there for, you know, a decade or, you know, since it was
Okay.
there. School districts across the country have been using these turf fields, but there has been on Pink to you know, to kind of state, there's certainly concern, I think, you know, among people about, you know, the materials in that.
And from your perspective, basically just quickly in terms of budget perspective and health perspective, just quickly, I know this probably need a lot of data and something, but overall, have you heard anything, accidents or something serious going on?
I mean, I've read different things, and you can read a lot of different things. I mean, there's like so many things on ping. There's pros and cons. Having a turf field is like having 3 fields. You can play morning, noon, and night on these fields. It does not require the same amount of maintenance. It does not need watering. The line striping does not need to get done like it needs. It doesn't need mowing. There are benefits to the turf field, but there are also, I think, potential concerns that people have. I've read things about goalies or people that are more stationary in place. So I can't proclaim to be the expert in it. And, other than saying that for a city this size and for the amount of use that we have, there's a real demand for fields. And I think this does satisfy trying to get more field usage for our families out there. But like so many things alike, there's some risk with this.
Just quickly, Tamika. So when we initially decided to use the synthetic turf, what's the primary consideration? Budget, financial reasons, or usability, or other reasons?
I would have to put it. I mean, so we're not making this is the Park and Rec and Culture that it's under their purview making this decision. So they manage those fields. So I'd have to get from them what that primary. I think it's a combination of factors, but it's them driving that decision.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, on ping. Others? Right. Thank you very much, Liam. Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it. All right, up next is a presentation and recommendation from the Calendar Working Group. And for this, Kathy, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tamika. First of all, I will tell you, and you'll get a presentation tonight from Dr. Hoag. I also know in the audience, we have a couple of members from our Calendar Working Committee. So I will acknowledge the group, but I want to tell you the exciting news today was being handed the winners of our survey contest. So to encourage families to complete the survey, there were 25 $20 gift cards to Cabot's, which I've heard wonderful things about. I can't wait to get there. And I want to thank the Village Bank for supporting us with those Cabot gift cards. And the #1 prize was the ride on the fire truck. And at the time, the fire engine. At the time, I had said, the last day of school. Well, we kind of came very close to that. So the good news is I got to call today Principal Mara Morse. The winner was a 2nd grader at Lincoln Elliott. She immediately reached out to the family. Our young person is Sage. We reached out to her mom, Teresa Surratt. They were more than excited about winning the grand prize. So the plan is actually for next school year that Sage will be able to invite some of her friends. Not only, I thought this was great for, you've got October being Fire Prevention Month, and Maura had talked about the possibility of, with the fire engine going there, making sure the kids get to see it and the workings of it. So that's my first call tomorrow is to Chief Gentile. So I know he was very excited about this being the grand prize. So first of all, congratulations to everybody. And I know there is outreach to all the families with the information we have on the gift cards also. So be assured of that. So first of all, I want to really thank everybody, and I'll talk a little bit about who was on the group, but I think the background for this was a district goal to be culturally responsive, to foster inclusion, belonging, and connectedness. And one of the considerations is looking at our school calendar and deciding whether we include or not a number of religious and cultural observances that I think really has been conversation in the district for a few years. So the working group was formed in January of 2023 to begin review of our school calendar. This was prompted in part by a presentation last year from 2 students, one student from Newton North, one from actually a graduate of Newton South. And they had actually taken their own survey of students at the schools. Our group met 6 times between February and June of this year. And major outcome of the group was the development and administration and analysis of the surveys for our students, our staff, and our families to gather information on holidays that are celebrated by our community members. So let me first of all, before we go into, and you do have just about a 30-page report. And thank you, Dr. Hoag, for putting all of that information together. But I want to thank our working group members, parents, teachers, community members, administrators. So Rania Ate from served two roles. She was a parent and also worked at Newton South. Karina Bagdasarian, a student at Newton South. Charlene Bay. Charlene, I think you're here this evening, an English teacher, and the NTA representative from Newton North, Chris Bresky, school committee member. Melody Chung, is Melody here? Student from Newton North? No, I'm sorry, thought I saw her. Kanchan Kant, a math teacher at North. Charlie Mayette, Dean of Students at South. Ryan Normandin, math and physics teacher at South. Anping Shen, a school committee member. Tammy Sitkar, a parent from South. Dr. Katie Hoag, Julie McDonough, our Director of Communications, and myself. And with that, Dr. Hoag, I'm going to turn it over to you to share the results.
So I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about the survey results. There is much more detail, as Kathy mentioned, in the report that you have, but we'll talk about sort of some general takeaways here. So for some detail on the survey, as Kathy mentioned, we had 3 surveys, one for students, one for staff, and one for families. Those surveys were open from May 17th through June 2nd of this year. For students, the survey was for students in grades 6 through 12. We had a response rate of 38.5% for that group. For staff, we had a response rate of 56.3%. And for families, we had a response rate of 49.1%. So one of the main questions that the survey asked was what holidays these 3 groups of our community celebrate. The graph here is showing the percentage of survey respondents who celebrate the holidays that we included on the survey. So we included the observed religious holidays and the recognized religious holidays on the survey. So we asked families about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Diwali, Lunar New Year, Good Friday, and Eid al-Fitr. For students and families, Good Friday, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Lunar New Year were celebrated the most frequently. In the graph, the green bar is students, blue is staff, and yellow is the families. For staff, Good Friday, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur were celebrated the most frequently. We also asked survey respondents who celebrate those holidays what sort of observance they would want for that holiday. And the majority responded that they would like a full day off from school. And the majority feel that having a full day off is extremely important for those holidays. We also asked some questions around Newton school practices for homework and assignments during the holidays. And based on the results of the survey, it's clear that the practices are inconsistent across the district and between levels. So 49% of our responding middle school students and 41% of our responding high school students said they did not know about their school's practices during holidays. For students who responded and knew about their school practices, they were less likely to say that those practices were implemented very well or somewhat well for recognized holidays than for observed holidays. So over half of our high school students who responded to the survey said that these practices were not implemented very well or not implemented at all for recognized holidays, compared to 38% of our middle school students. The survey also asked all 3 groups about their priorities for the school calendar. And based on the results, the priorities for the calendar differ across the 3 groups. The graph here is showing the top priority for the NPS school calendar for students in the first bar, staff in the middle bar, and family in the last bar. The majority of students who responded want to reflect the diversity of the community by observing more holidays, which is reflected by the orange section of the bar in each of the 3 groups. The largest percentage of our responding staff want to ensure the earliest end date, which is indicated in the dark blue section of each of the bars. Although a similar but slightly smaller percentage of staff also want to reflect the diversity of the community, which again is that orange section of the bar. For our families, the largest percentage of families want to maximize the continuity of learning, which is the lighter blue section of the bars for all three groups. There's more detail on this in the memo, but we looked at the dates of the 3 observed holidays and the 3 recognized holidays that are currently on our calendar over the next 20 years. This table is sort of condensing that information into a smaller table. The holiday dates over the next 20 years that are shown in the memo are based on the data that was available in this June. So over the next 10 years, if we look at including observed holidays only, there's an average of 2 holidays over 10 years. And if you look at observing our currently observed and recognized holidays, so all 6 of them, over the next 10 years, it's an average of 4 days, 4 holidays from school. Over the next 20 years, for observed holidays only, it's 2.1 days. And for our observed and recognized holidays, it's an average of 3.9 school days. So our working group has 3 recommendations based on the results of this survey. So the first one is really to maintain the importance of celebrating the diversity of our community while considering the impact on the school calendar. So members of the working group felt strongly that while the survey results might indicate that certain holidays are celebrated by a larger number of our community members than others, it does not reduce the importance of the holidays for everyone who celebrates each one. So we thought that was important to say. The second recommendation is that the school committee should develop a district-wide policy for homework and assignments during observed and recognized holidays this fall. So the development would happen this fall, and then the district should ensure that it's implemented consistently across and within schools. And then our last recommendation is that the school committee consider the results of this survey when determining the school calendar for the 2024 to 2025 school year, which that work would begin this fall. So that is all we have for the presentation. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Kathy, and the entire team, those who are here and those who aren't, for doing this work. It's really great. Questions from the members, questions, thoughts, comments, concerns? Also on pink.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Someone has to start. Normally, I'm not the first one, but thank you very much, Katie. And I know this, we only talk a small part of this survey, and this report has quite much data and takes time to understand. And so I'm not going to talk about that, but I just want to highlight a few things which I have been learning, working this process. And I'm very happy to learn more about these holidays, particularly about these, the Diwali and Eid al-Fitr. And by the way, I just like let people know that during the May, the API months, library Ellen Mayo contact me, say, Ampin, do you have any ideas to celebrate API? I said, I happen to have an idea. And we are working on the calendar. So we are talking about 3 new holidays, and mostly they are celebrated in Asian community. So I helped work with the library to celebrate these 3 holidays in the drug auditorium to ask students to talk about holidays and performance, and I was involved. Very happy to learn more about these holidays. And also this past Monday, I went to the Hyde Park to join the celebration of Juneteenth. So realize the meaning of the holidays really very significant and broad and community-based and the culture, the heritage, history, everything. So I just hope people, when think about holidays, not only about a few more days. Now we have to add 2 more days. It's too technical. Just add 1 day, 2 days. And, looking back the history of the American public schools, the mission of public school is to serve the public. Of course, 150 years ago, when Horace Mann started public schools, they probably only Christmas and Thanksgiving, and then gradually added more holidays. So I think we all understand the society is changing and the culture is changing. And so I'm very happy to see that the very first line is district goal to be culturally responsive to foster inclusion, belonging, and connectedness. And I would even add a little bit more. I think this is a celebration of overall community values, heritage, and culture. So in that sense, it's not only inclusion, now the part of community. So we are all members of this community. So I think in that sense, I really hope that people will think in that way to celebrate. And also I'd like to take opportunity to thank Kathy and Julie and you as district members to help to move this process, which takes time. And certainly, Katie, you did the yeoman's work and the tremendous data analysis, but also other people supported. And also I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Chris, who helped to dig out the data for next 10 or 20 years of the 3 holidays. And I was very impressed Chris's data analysis work, which is not easy and could be very time consuming. So I just want to say a few things, and I'm very eager to hear other people's comment.
Thank you, Anupam. Got a question from Paul. Go ahead, Paul, and then I'll share my thoughts.
Thank you, Tamika. Katie, thank you so much for preparing the report. And I want to acknowledge the fact that Anping and the students really got us started on all this in the last couple of years. And I think it's a really useful and important conversation. And Tamika, I know we're not going to dive into the actual conclusions that we're going to reach for several months, but I just wanted to relate to you to think about, as we get into that, an experience we had at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center on exactly these same issues. So the Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital was a result of a merger of a Methodist hospital and a Jewish hospital. And as a result, we kind of inherited a set of holidays from those two antecedent institutions. But meanwhile, the demographics of the combined institution also changed, so that there was a dramatic increase in the number of Indian families and also Muslim families. And one of the things that came up was that the holidays we were observing each year, where we would close the hospital officially, although you never close everything, of course, left people who were not Jewish, for example, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, being forced to take that holiday, while their children, for example, might still be in school, and so they couldn't celebrate it as a real day off with their family, and likewise other holidays. And what we actually ended up doing is making all of the religious and cultural holidays voluntary. In other words, you got to designate for yourself which ones you would take off, subject to an annual maximum per year. And that way people would celebrate at home the ones they wanted to celebrate, and not have to celebrate the ones at home that were not relevant to them. And it ended up being a very satisfactory result. I don't know if we can have that analogy to what we're doing, but I just wanted to raise it as an example of how we were able to be quite inclusive and respectful of everybody's traditions, but also give people agency to decide which holidays really matter to them and their family, while keeping the organization open and functioning. So I just thought I'd mention that as an example of another way to think about this kind of problem.
Thanks, Paul. I think my takeaway from what you shared is that there's a lot of creative thinking that could be applied to solve this particular problem. And the observation that I wanted to share is that I think the recommendations have a lot of flex in terms of specifically this third recommendation. It's a recommendation it's recommendation right? It doesn't say that we believe 1, 2, 3 holidays or culturally significant days should be factored in. It leaves a lot of discretion for the committee. And so my question then is, what would you suggest is the best process for the committee to do so? To work with, I'm sure our incoming superintendent will have a lot of thoughts and input for us to consider as well. But when we're thinking about this, we do have the data as to which holidays are more observed. But recommendation number 1 says don't just consider that. So it's very broad. So I don't know if Chris or Anping, Katie, if you have any thoughts as to how you kind of think through the recommendations as to where you land, because at some point we're going to have to land on a decision here. And how do we do that is my question.
So I have a couple thoughts. The members of the committee were very reticent to say we want to go down the road of, we're going to prescribe what holidays NPS is going to recognize and how they're going to recognize. And there was, the committee didn't feel that was their job. So it did sort of morph from this very big, broad thinking of, our goals and how do we be inclusive and how do we recognize people and make people, feel like they're seen. It sort of morphed much more into this data collection and sort of give us the tools to be able to make that decision. So, I mean, just if, from a starting point, and I'll say this was probably a little bit more my construct than, maybe adopted by the full committee, but, there's a starting point of which I think can be done sort of immediately. And this should be something for Anna to take on, working with her staff, of having consistent policies and practice in place for next year. Like that can happen. That doesn't even need us to implement that. So that's sort of step 1, because that's not happening now. And it's happening very inconsistently across the district. And teachers and students aren't even aware that such things exist in their buildings when they do. But beyond that, then to say, there's some concept of saying, for a relatively small population, you have to accommodate those people and make sure if, I don't know if that's if it's unexcused absences or days off for staff or things like that, something kind of like what Paul's talking about, where the district is operating, but we're accommodating those folks. Then at some point you reach some critical mass of saying, if our, Jewish student population isn't going to show up, that's 25% of the kids in Newton. And, there's sort of no point to having school that day. So you go with a much more blunt instrument of saying, we're going to take a district-wide holiday. Where that critical mass is, I don't know. I think that's the big point of discussion. And that might sound a little too pragmatic and analytical, but I mean, that's kind of the reality, we're, you're not going to close the public schools in Bahrain for Christmas. Like that's the reality. So I think, if you look at it and say, okay, the Christian, Jewish, unaffiliated is something like 90% of our population across student, staff, and families. We close schools for the 2 Jewish holidays at roughly 20% or something, 22%. That's roughly the same number of people who celebrate Lunar New Year. And I mean, I think that's something you have to take into consideration, that you have 2 very similar sized populations. You look at the population who celebrates Diwali and Eid, and it is a far lower number. And, you know, is that a number that reaches critical mass of saying, being pragmatic, this, you go to the blunt instrument as opposed to the accommodation? I think that's really the question we're trying to answer here. And, you know, I think for next year, we absolutely have to make sure we have this consistent policy and practice in place, make sure it's visible, make sure people are aware of it. And then for the following year, we have to, I think about that question of balancing accommodation and, you know, something much more blunt.
So, that sparked some discussion. I love that. All right, let me follow up and then we'll go Cove, Emily, Kathy. So I think I agree with that philosophical kind of the construct of how we should go about it. The question still becomes, how do we go about it? And the school committee coming to a consensus around a decision, we're going to need to have a firm recommendation in hand to be able to act on that. And so that's where I'm going with this. I think we need to have a process for how we as a committee, because we would have to decide on this, narrow down this recommendation, which at this point is very, very broad, into something specific and actionable for the following year. So, thank you. Go ahead, Cove, and then Emily.
I didn't know if we considered it all or if there's a space to consider when the school year starts. I thought that was part of this discussion as well. So I just didn't know if there's space for that next. I mean, obviously it seems like we're talking about next fall. We would have to be talking about this decision. Is there space in that to talk about when school starts? And you didn't survey people on that?
Yes, so we even had that discussion when we put this thing together, and I very much wanted that to be part of the discussion, but given current negotiations, that was not included.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Cove. Go ahead, Emily, and then Kathy.
Real quick, and it in fact dovetails very nicely on this, and surprising you not at all, is the fact that the quantitative data is exceptionally important, but I also found fascinating the qualitative information that happened and the themes that arose from the open response. And then I think that should also be part of our discussion and conversation, because there were some very excellent points, including a question about whether we could move the start date, which is something that had come up as one of the themes. So I think that would be important for us to also include in our deliberations and discussions.
And just as one aside on the start date, we looked at, 20 years out into the future of where all the holidays fall, because, sometimes holidays will be duplicative. They'll fall on the same day, they fall on weekends, all that kind of stuff. It works out to, if you were to recognize all 6 of these non-state federal holidays as days off, and you are starting school after Labor Day, you get 3-4 snow days, and you're not going to finish by June 30th. It happens about once every decade or so.
Does that include wind days?
That, I'm sorry, all forms of weather events,
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
precipitous or not.
Kathy, go ahead.
So I actually agree with Cove's comment, and I might even take it further that we might want to look at our April vacation structure. I raise it as a question, whether that's really the best use of 4 days in April, given these other potential uses for days. I throw it out there. But the other question I wanted to know is, I think I have the sense that there is some DESE rule about the number of students who, when you can count a day, if a certain number of students is absent. Did I make that up? Like, is there a number of students that you can't count a day?
Just how long you have to be.
Yeah,
Oh, there's
like a
okay.
half day will count. I
It's
believe
not-
you have
there's
to
not-
serve a meal. I'd have to look.
Is there there's no rule that says if half of your students are gone, you can't count the day?
I'd have to check, Kathy, but that I haven't used it. It's 180 days, 180 student days. Half days do count as a day, as a full day.
So let's follow up on
I was
this
just curious.
for sure.
I thought I had heard that, but maybe I just made that up.
Yes, so along those lines, well, actually not. My thought was for the second recommendation, which is that the school committee develop that district-wide policy. Normally where we go when we're developing policies is whether there's some guidance existing for masks. And so I think that's another thing to explore. Maybe this issue has been looked at for other school districts and we can piggyback on the work that's already been done. Not to say that it has, but if so, we should look at it. All right, well, we have some work. I think for anyone who was hoping that this would be the kind of panacea, final recommendation, final say, not quite so. The school committee has to do some the school committee has to use the data that you've already done to analyze the path that we should explore for the district. Fair to say?
Tamika,
Go ahead on.
just quickly, so what's the timeline here?
That's the magic question. That's the one that's kind of racked my brain. I think we have to put in some, our next agenda is the school committee calendar. Our calendar, as it stands, is going to need to have some of these calendar working group discussions added to it. I don't know if that's a retreat or a workshop or something, but we don't have to do it tonight. So don't anybody get, to calendar holding the phone on the calendar, but we do have to plan for that next year. Does that make sense? I don't know exactly when and what the timeline would look like.
Yeah, normally, the practice is superintendent generate a kind of draft of school calendar and then submit to the school committee. We review, approve. So we do not come up with some kind of a draft of school calendar and then we decide. So I just want to understand, for public to understand, people are listening.
I think in this instance, since it would be a large, significant change, the school committee would have to inform the superintendent, and the superintendent would then have to build out the calendar based on our, what we determine for the holidays.
Okay, and we do not have any formal school committee meeting during the July, August.
That is a bit of, I think we're going to have to think about squeezing in something because we get so far behind. I know it's difficult with everyone having various plans for the summer, myself included, but it really does set us off on a good, strong foundation if we can have at least one meeting through the summer and then hit the ground running in the fall.
Okay, thanks.
Other thoughts, comments, questions? Thank you, Katie. As per usual, you've done really great work with the data.
Thank you,
for this
Katie.
project.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
And thank you again for the working group for the calendars. All right, we are going to continue on with our draft school committee calendar. Speaking of calendars, here there's been a draft calendar that's shared with all the members. I think the most facile way is just to ask if you note anything, have concerns, comments. Yes, of course, Lisa. Yep. Yes, so school. Yes, so I'm just going to repeat so that folks at home can hear. This draft calendar is mainly a guide for dates and a placeholder for dates for meetings in the next year. The school committee will refine those the agenda items for these dates through our workshop in the summer with our new superintendent. Kathy, go ahead.
Just this is sort of a nit, Lisa, but in the agenda items, all of the years are off. So like throughout where we're talking about the calendars, the years just need to be adjusted.
Thank you, Kathy. Anything else? Okay. All right, we will put that aside for the moment and continue on to our PTO equity spending guidelines. So for this presentation, PTO Council reps Valerie Davison, Helen McCadia, and Michelle Say were unfortunately, they had a conflict with this rescheduled date and time for this agenda item, but they provided extensive written materials for the committee to digest and consider. Renee McCall, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, also a member of that committee, is here. If you have any questions specific to the recommendations, other than that, we will take up any specific actions at later meeting. Question? Sure, of course, comment.
I know that there may watch afterwards, but I'd just like to say that decision tree was incredibly helpful as somebody who has been through this process repeatedly from PTO council on down to just a PTO co-president. And I know it's very complicated, but it was actually very, very helpful. And so kudos to them for putting it together and making it so understandable.
Yep. Agreed. Thank you, Emily. Any other questions, comments? Well, comments. Great. All right. So our last item tonight is our interim superintendent Kathy Smith's farewell message to everyone, one and all.
Before I do that, and I know this isn't on the agenda and you will be getting much more information, but I think I talked about this probably in the very beginning. So, and I'll be sharing this with the school committee. So Dr. Renee McCall has informed me that the Teaching and Learning Department is going to select the EL education as our reading curriculum. There's a lot of work ahead for us, starting obviously into the fall and into the next year with launching, implementing professional development. So we will provide, we're very excited about this. It really does meet, and I'll share the last paragraph. We're excited about the impact that EL education will have on our students' learning. We look forward to working closely with our educators and our families to ensure a successful implementation. The actual rollout of EL education will be gradual, beginning in the fall of 2023, continuing throughout the 24-25 school year. So again, more information, again, as I said, professional development, implementation process will be forthcoming. I didn't want to leave without actually being able to share that with the committee. So any questions? I know this isn't on the agenda, but just wanted you to know that it was forthcoming.
Part of your farewell remarks.
So that's exactly how I saw that. So again, thank you earlier for allowing me during the school committee tribute, which I so enjoyed and appreciate more than you'll ever know. I do want to take the opportunity to really share with the community how very special this interim superintendent role has been for me. I really do talk about it as one of the adventures of a lifetime. I knew that coming on board. I knew there would be challenges. I can't say I knew all of the challenges that were ahead. I think we worked very collaboratively and we were able to meet them head on, but I do have a few thank yous. You know, just today, I had the PTOC drop off a wonderful, I loved it, Newton mug. I want to thank them, and all of the PTOs signed a wonderful card. I enjoyed the opportunity to meet with them on a regular basis, sometime in person, most of the time Zoom, but able to, again, have that special partnership, the CPAC, the LPAC, and so many groups that, again, allowed me to feel a part of the group, to have a sense of belonging, and to feel that we were a team. I want to thank again Mayor Fuller and her talented team of commissioners, fire, police chiefs, everybody that I met last summer, supported us all year through. And again, we're partners during this challenging year. To Mike Zillis and Chris Walsh from the NTA. My last official meeting with them was last week. I know they will continue. We actually talked about it today with the team that was meeting with the two of them, that they have already started to meet with Dr. Nolan. Lines of communication will continue to be open, and they've committed to working together. And that is a plus for all of our teachers, our staff, and really our entire community. you know, I can't say enough, and you hear me say this all the time about principals and district administrators. And, you know, I don't say this lightly when I talk always about Dr. Fleischman leaving me with a wonderful team of principals who will continue through the next year. That says a lot about the commitment to your students, to your families, to all of the challenges this year. They were always present. They were always there. They just have done an excellent job, not only leading our schools, but our coordinators, you know, leading all that happens for our students and our families throughout the district. I want to thank the teachers and especially the staff retirees who I'm really excited to finally say I'm retiring. Unfortunately, people around me, and I'm talking my mother, family, friends, nobody believes me, but I guarantee you, you know, that is happening. And congratulations to, again, all of our staff members that are retiring. I know there's a whole lot out there for us. And for teachers, I will tell you the proudest I ever am is when I talk about being a teacher. And I've had great opportunities being a superintendent and a leader, but really what comes to mind is the work that you do in your classes each and every day. And sometimes I feel like our profession is under assault, and I am optimistic that as we continue to move forward as a country, a nation, you know, a community, that we understand. I understand it with your parents when they call, you know, they're talking about how important it is, the school, the connection, you know, the teachers for their children. I feel that each and every day. So again, I want to thank the teachers for certainly the work that they have done, and the students and the families. Many of you have reached out. I've had the opportunity to meet with families during conversations, PTO meetings, events, and sometimes parents just wanting to talk about things that they're not pleased with. But every one of those meetings was respectful. I really appreciate you coming into the office or phone calls. You know, we certainly made connections, and I think what we did was put the best interest of our students first and our school community. And I thank them for, again, their respectful nature. I really, more than you will ever know. And I have to finish with my central staff. So tonight I have here Renee. I know Casey was virtual. Toby, Aisha, Liam, my assistant superintendents, Jill, Stephen, Kathy Lopes, and Martine. And a special congratulations to Martine for doing an excellent job during challenging times. So Martine will be leaving us actually at the end of the month. I think her last day is Friday. So thank you, Martine, for your compassion for our educators, your professionalism, and your dedication to the Newton Public Schools, and to my central staff. So tonight you talk about the big rocks, you talk about the, you know, dual budgets, you talk about the override, you talk about the superintendent search, you know, we talk about, you know, all of the literacy. I could go on. And I know, you know, that our success was based on not only them and their teams. So when you talk about the budget, the hours that we put in and that they put in meeting with their principals, meeting with their, you know, their district coordinators and leaders and talking, how are we ever going to close a $5 million gap? And I have confidence that not only did we work hard, do I wish things were different? You know that I do. And I could talk forever about that, but that's for another day. So I want to thank them. Every presentation that you saw, every group that came together. And I'm quickly thinking about the guidance presentation from the high school, the DEI work that happened in the district, our elementary second grade that came together to talk about our interventionists, the literacy presentations that we did, which I want to say there were probably 3 or 4. The HR update in, I believe, early January that talked about teacher retention, diversification of our workforce grant, all of those things that were presented throughout the year. You know, Stephen came and talked to us about where we're at with our IT, what we need for cybersecurity in our departments. I could go through every one of them, and the work that they do every single day is tremendous. So I want to thank them for their professionalism and all of the work that really allowed us to do this. So I hope I haven't left anybody out. I'm going to miss you more than you will know. And I will definitely be watching from afar. And I know Dr. Nolan is set up for for continued success. And I will never forget the wind day. So I will tell you, and my husband is here to attest to this fact. I did listen to what was said to me. I heard about wires falling down. I heard about the flooding at Day Middle School where, you know, students would be lost in a puddle. And again, it was a week before, it was the day before the break. And that is true. I couldn't have lived with the fact if anything happened. And I will tell you, when I woke up on the 23rd of December, and although I was on Cape Cod, I opened my door, it was 57 degrees. It was sunny. And I just looked at my husband and I can't tell you how terrible I felt in making that decision. But anyway, all's well that ends well. And I wish you a wonderful future in a wonderful, wonderful school district. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you very much.
I just want to add it. You had a good joke for 2 high school graduates.
I loved it.
Laugh twice. Second time you even laugh better because you're telling better joke. So that's a real story, and you turn this into a positive way. You learn something and make it a great learning experience. That's good for students to hear.
Well, thank goodness for my West Point headed student who you still had to see the look on his face when he came up to me that January day at Lost and Found, the production. And Dr. Turner was standing beside me and he said, "Oh, I want you to meet the superintendent." He was so excited to meet me. And then whenever he thanked me for that day off that he would never have to make up, and chuckled all the way back to his seat. So you're right. We learn lessons from our students. So have to find humor in everything.
Thank you, Kathy. And I think never apologize for making a call that you think is right and that has the best intention of kids at heart. So with that, we have concluded the posted business for tonight's meeting. We will have to look for a time to include something in July in our very busy summer calendars with our summer retreats, between our summer retreats and our with our new superintendent, our central staff. We will find a time for that and let the community know when that is happening. So to our students, we wish them a wonderful summer, and to our faculty and staff, may you get lots of rest and certainly take some time for some fun this summer. The next regularly scheduled meeting, as I said, will be sometime, and we appreciate you very much. Our meeting is now adjourned.
And we're going to have some photos.
Oh, yes, the photo, of course.
Recording.